Bobby Charlton, well done, Manchester United. Beckham, it's a Sheringham, and Solskjaer has done it! And the South saved it! United again! Renee! A magnificent goal by Robin van Persie!
Welcome to United Hour, your redcafe.net podcast for all things Manchester United. I'm your host, Mark.
I'm Colm.
And I'm Ashwin.
That's racism in action. So, we need a laugh after that, I think. We're recording this not straight after the game, but we've had about an hour or so to reflect on it, I think. And disappointing result all around, all told. But when looked at in a wider picture, can maybe be appreciated as a miniature step forward. So we'll go with the lineup, which was pretty much identical to the Chelsea game, and I think what we identified on the podcast in last week's episode as kind of what we should be going for. We had De Gea in goal, Wan-Bissaka, Victor Lindelof, Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, McTominay and Pogba in the midfield. Daniel James was the swap. He came in for Andreas Pereira. Jesse Lingard played the 10/8 role, and Rashford on the left with Martial starting out up front. First bit of the first half, and I think generally the first half as a whole, we were quite comfortable, I think. Colin, I'll come to you first. How did you see the opening bit of the first half, the opening exchanges there?
Comfortable. I was surprised slightly. I think Wolves really sat off us in the first half, when I expected maybe them to press us a lot more. I think they maybe bought into the idea that sitting off us might be the best way forward for a lot of teams this year. Haven't seen us be quite aggressive in our tactics so far in Orlais with the press and kind of wanting the game to open up so that we could devastate teams on the counter. So maybe the prevailing wisdom was that just let them have the ball kind of thing. There definitely didn't seem to be much of a press on the back line at all, and Wolves really sort of sat back. But to be honest, I think we dealt with that quite well. We passed it around. We didn't create loads, but we looked effective and we looked happy to keep the ball as well, which I think was good. And I mean, I don't think Wolves really had a sniff at all. I think I was expecting much more of a response from them after quite a poor start to their Premier League season last week. And it didn't really come in the first half at all. I think Nuno would have been very disappointed by that again, and I think we didn't really capitalise enough on that dominance that we had in terms of actually creating clear-cut chances. But the first half was great. I was really pleased. Although you just always felt at 1-0, there's a sting coming.
Yeah, and the thing that surprised me equally as yourself with regards to how they sat back off of us was they would have had a numerical superiority there in the middle had it not been for the forward line and how they went about their defensive business, which I thought they were fantastic at, and it forced Rui Patricio into either playing a risky ball out to his centre back or just bypassing the midfield altogether, which played right into
Slabhead,
old Slabhead there, who had a absolutely monstrous first half there. And again, they were just happy to surrender possession to us on that basis. And it felt like if they'd gotten the ball down on the deck and sort of really used Dendoncker and Neves and like their midfield to its potential, then that could have been an area where they were able to hurt us or at least force us to make some sort of adjustment. But as it goes, the first half was pretty dominant by us, and Luke Shaw started and instigated the move for the first goal there. Ashwin, how did you see that first goal? I thought it was a fantastic goal myself. It was one of the more pleasing goals I've seen in a while because it just seemed to be a nice little team move, everyone moving off the ball. What were your thoughts on it?
I thought it was really good. It was really good. Like you said, Shaw. I think a lot of our attacking play, not that there was much of it in the first half, to be honest, but I don't know, that it was just weird because they didn't seem interested in coming out at all. And then obviously that just made it really hard to break them down. Because right now, we don't have enough creative players, I don't think, to kind of that are clever enough to unlock defenses. So when teams sit back on us, it's kind of hard. But that move was really good because they had just went on a move of their own. I think they'd actually come out a little bit right before that. And so we kind of had the ball. It wasn't exactly, a massive transition, but I think Shaw saw, an opportunity to get forward. So he just played it into Rashford. And, his run really is what opened up the space for Martial to get that shot off. And that finish was, I don't think as good as, Neves' goal was, which we'll talk about, like that Martial goal was, especially on his weak foot. That's the kind of goal that I think would make Solskjaer very happy. I think that would make him extremely happy to see such an instinctual finish instead of him, maybe trying to take another touch to get it back on his right, just absolutely hitting it into the roof of the net. That was a really good move, and I just like the movement. I think, like I mentioned before, Shaw, every time we did look like we could get in behind them or created some space in front of the back five they had, it was because Shaw was making an overlapping run. And it just, I wish, to be honest, I think Shaw actually played way better today than he did last week.
I agree.
And even in the second half, Traore's fucking God, that guy defending him is probably as frustrating as it is as his end product. So, I don't know. I just thought Shaw was really good today.
Well, I think the thing with Luke Shaw in that first half is I think it was definitely an area where Nuno, obviously with Doherty going off injured, because there was obviously talk of him being ill in the warm-up, and he looked to have pulled up with something as well throughout the game. But I think it was a very deliberate tactic by Nuno to then try and pin Luke Shaw back into our half, because he was the one, he was always the spare man out on this left-hand side. So it seemed like a really good adjustment by Nuno on that basis, in that it kind of nullified Luke Shaw a little bit, and that he couldn't really wander as far forward without us having to worry about the pace of Traore sort of there at the back of us there. We were discussing it in the WhatsApp while the game was going on as well. Just come back to the defence in that first half, because to me it looked like you say, everything was coming down that left-hand side, and we had very little coming down of the right-hand side other than a booking for Dan James. And Wan-Bissaka looked not as convincing on the ball as he has done throughout pre-season and what he did in the Chelsea game. He had a bit of a howler of a shot as well, somewhere through the second half, which was just absolutely disgraceful. But Ashwin, you were vehement in your defence of him, and we'll come back to you. But Colm, how did you see Wan-Bissaka's performance? Because a couple of us were saying that he didn't look. It wasn't a bad performance from him by any stretch, I don't think. But there were times whereby his recovery was what was making the difference, and that his positioning was slightly off, and that he actually left us open a couple of times there. How did you see his and Lindelof's first half performance?
I was very happy with the whole back four for the entire game, to be honest. I thought that Wan-Bissaka does go forward and stay forward. He's not. I think he knows he can get back pretty much all the time in these recovery ones. So it's kind of like that old adage that you used to say about Damien Dull and stuff like that. That like, if you have to make a last ditch tackle, you've made a mistake and all that kind of stuff. And there definitely is credence to that. That Ferdinand kind of defender who's just in control and kind of above it all almost, and just reads the game and nips things in the buds before they become something, is all great. But I think it applies much more to centre backs than it does to full backs. And I think there's always going to be instances, particularly in the modern game, where we're asking our full backs to get so farther forward that they are going to be 20 yards, 30 yards ahead of their kind of opposite number, the winger. And to be honest, his recoveries are so good. So, I think it's almost, I think he affects players when they know he's running back at them, that they begin to, make bad decisions and doubt themselves and stuff like that. And again, he just has these pinpoint sort of jabs with his feet to nick in and grab the ball. And I think for a long time, it's been the prevailing tactic at United to be very passive defensively. We see a lot of shadowing, and really that's true of the modern game in general. But I like a defender who actively tries to win the ball. And I think a lot of the time it's more about shepherding and getting men behind the ball and funneling people, and players into certain areas to then kind of nullify them without ever actually trying to win the ball back. And so much of our good counter-attacking play so far in pre-season and this season has come from when he's actively gone after the ball, got it, and then released it, So to be honest, I'd forgive a lot. And if he does have to get back those 20 yards, I'm always very confident that he can. And I think he wins a lot of balls back around the halfway line, where it's still a very useful place for us then to launch an attack. I think he suffered going forward today. There doesn't seem to be much relationship there with Dan James, which is not an issue after 1 or 2 games. But they didn't really seem to know what to do with each other. There was a fair few sort of misplaced passes, or times when I felt they were kind of looking at each other, like, and he was thinking, "Are you going to run?" And Dan James was like, "Well, are you going to give me it?" And it would just, they didn't seem to be on the same wavelength at all. So the right side, in that sense, is still very much an issue for me. But broadly, my only real criticism of the back four, because I think they defended well throughout, and I think Wolves caused us very few problems, and were pretty well looked after by that back four. And that is a Wolves sort of attacking side that have really, really caused us problems last year. Like, dragged us all over the shop and made Chris Smalling and Jones, etc., look like boys. Jimenez really did last year. He looked like the all-round number 9 that he did not look like today. But my main issue with them today was I felt that the ball just moved so slowly around them. I felt that about the whole team, that we just, in possession, it was very slow again, and it was very play it almost behind the player every single pass, and that really started to get at me. I felt like Maguire and Lindelof stepped out a few times, and Lindelof forced quite a lot of balls forward, would kind of ping them forward, which I was glad to see. But broadly, I feel like we need to move the ball a lot quicker, and that comes from the back. But really, it was a problem throughout the whole team.
Yeah, and I take your point about Wan-Bissaka and indeed fullbacks in general, that when we're asking them to be these attacking forces, that is so indicative of successful teams in the modern game, that you kind of need to accept that there's going to be some defensive mistakes going the other way. More to my point was that I think that when, in the few times that Wolves did get into our half in the first period that there was one in particular where I think it was either McTominay or James had a Wolves player fronted up, and he was telling Wan-Bissaka to check off onto the overlapping runner, and Wan-Bissaka was like, "No, you do it." And then McTominay's the guy who's got the guy. It was
James. I think it was James. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I felt like that was. I always dislike that when it's the right winger or the right winger coming back and not wanting to track their own man and wanting to pass it on. And I think in that instance, because I say that a lot on Shaw's side.
But if you're the man who's got him fronted up, then that's immediately right there. That's your man. You can't then come off of your man to then just sort of tag out with Wan-Bissaka, whereas you're giving him a 2 or 3 yard head start.
I mean, I think that was. Both of them literally put their hands up and made the same gesture at each other. So I think it was more of a miscommunication than anything else. And then Wan-Bissaka sort of half fell over and actually got the tackle in still. He got a touch. It wasn't great, but I think to pick out that one part and just say like that's an issue. I think it was just if anything, it just shows that even when he does lose a step, he's still right there.
But the only reason I bring it up is because that it's not a pattern, because it's 2 games. But there was also an instance in the last game where he completely got his marking assignment incorrect, and it almost cost us in that Chelsea game as well, where he just went for the ball and got drawn to the ball rather than actually looking around and having a bit more spatial awareness to see that there was a man that he should be picking up. That was Emerson in that instance, and obviously with this one as well. I don't think it's going to be a major thing, and I think maybe it has been a highlight of his play at Palace as well, and maybe it's just because we've got this 90-minute sort of focus on him now that it just becomes sort of more magnified, that these are kind of the little tiny things that he needs to iron out in this game. But yeah, I mean that was really the first half. There wasn't too much in the way of additional chances for us. I don't think Wolves didn't create all that much. I think they even referred to it on commentary that De Gea was little more than a spectator. So I thought Lindelof was kind of poor. I thought his distribution, I think he had an off game in terms of his distribution. I think that would cost us a lot in the first half. I think he picked it up a little bit in the second.
What do you think about his distribution?
I thought it was poor.
I thought he had the right idea, but he just couldn't execute it. He had one to Rashford he tried to play through that got picked off, and then he had another.
The free kick that he wasted.
The free kick was just fucking awful.
I could be wrong here, but I think he had the highest pass accuracy both in the first half and the second half, and I do think he misplaced a few moving forward, but I think broadly, I think we need to see that. I think we need to see that.
I thought he grew into the game a lot in the second half, and then I thought,
and he made a lot of passes. There was a lot of passes between Maguire and Lindelof, and a lot of passes in our back line in general. So it would stand to reason that he has a lot of passes and racks up accuracy stats in that way. But I felt like he left a couple of balls behind Wan-Bissaka when he didn't necessarily need to. He tried fizzing a couple in through behind the lines, which didn't come off, and they were broadly just way off target. And there was a free kick which was just an an absolute disgrace, of a wasted ball. So, as I say, he grew into the game. He had a hashed up clearance as well, and generally just looked quite nervy in the first 20 to 25. But he did grow into the game. As I say, in terms of our back four, I would have him down as the worst performing, but not necessarily a bad performance, in the same way that Andreas Pereira was probably our worst performer against Chelsea, but not necessarily a bad performance in and of itself. You kind of touched on it a little bit there, in the sense that we didn't really go for the kill. Do you think that away from home this is going to be a bit of a thing this year, or indeed sometimes at home as well, where teams just aren't willing to? Because I was surprised, because it's obviously Wolves' first home game of the season. It's a Monday night, the lights are there, cameras are there, the crowd seemed up for it, and then after 10 minutes where it kind of decided they weren't going to come out and test us really in any kind of meaningful way, or tried to go toe-to-toe with us, it kind of sucked the entire life out of the stadium. And it was just, do you think that that's what teams are going to try and do to us away from home, and just say, right, okay, we know you don't have that many creative players, try and break us down, here's our 8, and your 5 can play against our 8, and we're going to back our 8 every time?
I would imagine that many teams will do that. I don't know. With the Wolves, it's weird though, because I think they almost view these like their record against the top 6 last year was great, and then if you look at their record against the bottom teams, it was awful. So I think that they're really built to play against top sides because of how their entire system is a counterattacking system. That's how they play. They like to play very direct. Even though their midfield is pretty technically good, Neves is good, Dendonker's good, Moutinho has God knows how much experience he has. They could play a more progressive style, but they prefer to play very direct. And even when they came out in the second half, they were playing very direct. They're not like a possession team, right? They're not going to be big in the build-up. But I think Wolves is a pretty special case in that they almost view these Big Six games as like European ties. That's how I always imagine that they approach it. So I think it's it becomes a very tactical matchup against them, whereas somebody like, I don't know, fucking Newcastle will probably sit everybody behind the ball, but will suck at it, and it'll just be endless streams of attack. Whereas even in the first half with Wolves, even though they couldn't create anything themselves, I mean, we created that one chance, and that was it, basically. So I imagine a lot of teams will do that. I mean, most teams always do that against United, right? Sit back. And it's just a matter of us improving, like Colm talked about, not just moving the ball quickly, but after you move the ball, the match, it doesn't stop. Your job isn't over. You have to make, further actions. And it, honestly, at times in the first half, it just felt like the only people that were moving without the ball and providing options were Shaw and Wan-Bissaka. Because even James, I thought in the first half, he was he played very timidly. It seemed maybe his first Premier League start got to him, because I thought in the second half he was a lot more energetic. I still don't think he created a clear-cut chance or anything, but he definitely drove forward with the ball a bit more. I thought his pressing was better. He was more aggressive. So, maybe he just grew into the game. But in the first half, I just thought our movement in general was poor. And that also goes into, I don't know if we have a clear-cut idea yet of how to break down a team that's well-disciplined. That doesn't just sit deep, but is also well-disciplined in doing it. Whereas in the second half, Wolves came out a lot more, and there was a lot more back and forth in the match. So, it provided us an easier opportunities to create chances, which we did more of, but not enough of still.
Yeah, and I think there was definite improvement in terms of our attacking play towards the end of the first half, and the instances in the second half where it happened as well. And it happened when Maguire started stepping out of defence more, where he was able to then create more of an odd man there in the midfield area. And I think that will be a feature of play in the season, as he becomes in the defensive unit, becomes more confident with him being able to step out of that central defensive area and into midfield. And I probably think that we'll see a lot of that as a feature of our play at home as well. But as I say, that was more towards the end of the first half where he started to attempt that and really starting to succeed at it. But going into the second half, everyone seemed slow at the blocks. We weren't at it. I'm not taking the CAF appointed or the CAF point of view, I should say, that it's the entire defence that's gone to bits, because I think it's just a switch off there and then an absolutely world-class finish from Neves. How did you see it, Colm?
I mean, everyone wants to blame someone for a goal, but truly there's some goals that aren't anyone's fault.
The man has got it. Jackpot.
The mistake comes back to, I think, McTominay and Maguire, I think, who gave away the initial free kick.
It was
McTominay comes across and tries to absolutely
Maguire.
butcher Adama Traore with what was, I think, a yellow verging on a red that was not given as a foul. And then Maguire comes in, tries to pinch it, is a bit unlucky and kind of stamps on him, and that gives away the free kick. For me, that's the mistake. I think you can handle Traore a lot better in that instance. From that free kick, then it's a very, very good ball from Moutinho, which I don't think is any big issue. Jimenez makes a good run, which I don't think is a big issue, and is a great header onto the post, which then comes back off the head. Very fortunate not to go in. And then from there, we're slightly under the cosh. Again, Maguire, I think, skews his clearance for the ball driven in by Traore. Not a big, massive, issue there. I think he can put it out for a throw-in, but it goes out for a corner. And then from that corner, I think that's a great corner routine from Wolves. I mean,
it is.
Neves must come from about the halfway line, so no one should be marking him, and they kind of mix it up with a little short 1-2, and then that goes sort of through the line. And when you look at what Neves has to look at, he has about 4 United players all busting to get out to him. There's no lack of application or effort there in the way that's being defended. And he's so on top of the ball, and he takes it out of his feet, but barely, with zero backlift, and he's almost all hunched over and still wraps his foot around it, and it bends round Bissaka, who kind of, a minor criticism, Wan-Bissaka turns his back on it. I think he makes himself quite small, but I think players are, afraid about penalties and stuff as well, so it's you're talking split second, 90-mile-an-hour stuff, and then it goes off the bar. De Gea gets a hand to it, but not enough to keep it out, and I'm sure he saw it very late. It was 5 minutes of bad play from us. Okay, Wolves got on top of us, but there's not really much we can do about that goal. That's a great goal. That's a freak goal. It's a fantastic goal. It won't happen 1-100.
If you're gonna blame anybody for that goal, I guess you would probably have to blame. I think it was Rashford that was standing near to whoever Moutinho played it into to get the ball back. He reacted late. He didn't see him running towards Moutinho to receive the pass, and then he got out late, and then that gave enough space to Moutinho. But it was a really good routine. I guess, you can blame whoever you want, but
I think it's a team thing, but I still think it's such a well-crafted goal that you just have to say, I'm more concerned about, I think we knew we had it easy in the first half, and I think we thought we were just cruising along here and we're too good for Wolves, and Wolves obviously got a right kick up the arse at half-time, and they came out and they stepped out a lot more. They stopped sitting in, they started going out and pressing our back line, which we didn't like at all. I thought we kept trying to play it out from the back at sometimes to a fault, because I think that put us under pressure that we didn't need to necessarily, allow to happen. But I think it was a bit of a shock for us. I think our players were expecting more of the same in that second half and weren't quite ready for Wolves' change in application and their press. And credit us for trying to play out and still play out, but I think it didn't go the best for us, and that was what created that early pressure in the second half. But the goal is the goal. It's a great goal. My big issue, my huge issue, is that after the goal, there's 30 minutes left of that game, or 25 minutes. After the penalty, there's 20 minutes left in that game, and this is my biggest disappointment, because I think broadly we played not well, but it's a lot better than we've done against Wolves in the last year, and that's not an easy place to go. Yes, we should have created more, but broadly I think there was lots of good things there. But the lack of, after the goal, I thought, well, we'll get another chance, and we didn't really. And we didn't really ratchet up that pressure. We didn't look like we were ever going to create. If anything, it was much more 50-50 after that. And that lack of kind of mentality to switch back on and to get the win, aside from the chance that led to the penalty miss, that's the bit that's really hard for me to swallow at the moment.
Yeah, it was everything up to the box. It seemed to be fine. I think, and obviously just to go back to the goal just briefly, that hit from Neves, that's about the only place and the only trajectory that ball can take in that small context that allows it to go in. And I think that's what you're saying. It's one of those sort of 1 in 100 type hits. Obviously, we know that he's capable of that, but that hit in particular, that will rank up against some of the greatest goals that he'll ever score, simply because that's literally the only path that ball can take.
No, it's absolute perfection, and also it's a really good routine. It's clearly it was clearly on purpose. It didn't just develop by mistake. They clearly wanted to suck us in with the short 1-2 at the corner, and he clearly snuck in late to the edge of the box.
Yeah,
and you could see it. You could see it in his celebration as well, where he was kind of like pointing,
pointing like that's us. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it was clearly something that had been worked on, and something that were quite ecstatic about having come off. The only other sort of minor thing that I could bring up from the first half really was the chance that Rashford had fashioned out for Martial, and this comes off the heels of us saying, "Oh, fantastic! Yeah, he's learnt the value of being in the 6-yard box." Do we criticise Martial for not getting onto that cross?
Yeah, 100%.
Because that's an open net, and he's just not committed to it.
I don't know whether he thinks the defender's going to header it, or whether he's, I don't know. Someone I was watching with said he thought he was sort of scared of getting in against the post and stuff like that. But to me, it's very hard to stomach that as a number 9 not to put that in.
When it's 99.99% of the way there, and his foot is there, it's just
didn't do it.
He didn't believe in it.
You can't. I think Van Nistelrooy always said is that you need to always bank on the defender not missing the touch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that's where you have to exist as a number 9, because they've got mistakes. Centre backs in that situation have mistakes in them, and all right, you might not get it 9 times out of 10, but it's the one time out of the 10 that ends up being really, really important, and you forget about the other 9 instantly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was the only other thing from the first half, and our biggest chance. I think that, to go back to your point in terms of the second half after the penalty, which I think Pogba did really, really well to win, and I think
undoubtedly it was a great piece of play driving in the box,
and I think he's had kind of a bit of he had one of those games whereby we're sat here criticising our lack of creativity, and yet a lot of people will sort of put the spotlight on Pogba and say, well, he lost the ball so much. It's because he's trying to create. Like, if he wasn't the one creating, then we wouldn't have even had that in terms of a penalty or anything like that. So
I don't think he didn't have stupid giveaways. There's like a difference in what the giveaways are. Like, he had a giveaway last year against Wolves where he was trying to fucking dance in the, like, there was no value in it. He was just dancing in our own half, and he lost the ball. And then I think they scored immediately on the counter.
That was Fred.
Or whoever. I mean, Pogba's done that a million times, though. But, so it's like, those are the giveaways that he, like, even last week against Chelsea, he had a couple of times where he was dawdling on the ball and, like, tried to take on 2 guys right in front of our own box. And, luckily it didn't cost us. But those are the giveaways that you should have a problem with, because there's no value in what he's trying to achieve there. Whereas today, like, okay, maybe he gave away the ball trying to get Rashford in behind or get Martial in behind or spray the ball out wide. But I didn't think he had, like, even when he gave the ball away in a dangerous situation, which I really only think he did maybe once or twice, it wasn't because he was taking too much time on the ball. He wasn't like, he wasn't trying to showboat or prove how good he is or anything. He was just a mistake. Mistakes happen. And if I'm sure I've criticized Pogba many times before, but I personally thought he had a mature game in a lot of senses today. I thought that he had the appropriate fear. Like, he played with the appropriate understanding of, look, Wolves they're a counterattacking team. They want to press. These are the areas they want to win the ball. I have to be quick on it, and I have to make quick decisions. And if some of those decisions end up in losing possession in the attempts of creating a high-value chance, so be it. Because God knows McTominay wasn't doing it, and Lingard didn't do shit. So somebody has to try to create on the team. And it was Pogba today. And, I mean, it's going to be Pogba most of the year. So
I think like the focus will come to Pogba because of the second half. I thought... you kind of need to take the penalty out of it and discuss that on its own, because it's its own thing, and you shouldn't let that impact too much how we judge his whole 90 minutes. I thought he was good in some respects. I thought defensively he was good. I thought he put the work in. I thought he was one of the only ones wanting to take the ball in that midfield and go and help out his defenders and show. I was very disappointed in McTominay today. I thought he was poor. I thought he didn't win his 50-50s. He didn't seem to put himself about that much. And I thought he did a lot of standing still when we were in possession. Happy to be marked, happy for one of their midfielders to sit up on him. When there was times when Pogba was taking it from the defender and having to really struggle or battle to get any kind of pass to Wan-Bissaka, I thought that really hampered us progressing into the final third, because I don't think Lingard had his best game either in terms of dropping in to help. And those two things combined, I think, really made it a difficult day for Paul. There's clearly a desire from Ole for them, i.e. him and Paul and Scott, to move the ball very quickly when we win it back, to look for those early runs and those early passes. And we're going to see that not go so well, I think, a few times. It's like what we spoke about last week. Martial and Rashford will not always be on it this year. Our right wing and our 10 is going to be a constant issue this year. And similarly, I think the midfielders, there's going to be games where they give a lot of forward passes away. I'm quite happy to see them trying those passes. Today it was much more went wrong than went right, which was disappointing. I think Paul's a lot better than that. And I think a lot of them were just, they just went too quickly. I think there's the difference between starting an attack quickly but still taking a second to really make sure the pass is right than just kind of slamming it away basically in a vague direction of someone. And I think both he and Scott were guilty of that a fair few times, that it was too rushed and it was too forced. But I think we're going to get that through the year, so it doesn't really bother me. I'd still rather he was taking on those passes, because, as has been rightly pointed out, if it doesn't come from him, it ain't really coming from anyone, and that's the problem. I mean, Lingard is a very serviceable 10, and he did some good things today, but you could not really say he had anywhere near enough of an impact on that game. And I think, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. I think not investing in a 10 to really create is gonna be our biggest issue this year, and I think that's apparent already. I think Martial and Rashford was very, very good in the first half. I thought quite poor in the second half. Martial, I thought, was very good all over, but I think both of them are going to suffer from not having a creator higher up the pitch. And I think if we're asking Pogba as a deep six to do all of that, we're gonna have issues in that regard. And in that sense, I'd love Fred to come in and be that guy who can be the metronome back there and take the ball and move it forward to free up Paul to move further up the pitch, because I don't see anyone else in our team that can really have the impact we need to unlock those defences that are sitting in.
Yeah.
No, and I think with Pogba, certainly, as I said, agree with absolutely everything you said there. With regards to McTominay, I do think offensively he's had not the greatest game, but I don't think he's ever really going to have fantastically great games.
Yeah, and I'm happy for him just to be on the pitch. I think it's all a learning curve with him. So whilst I'm disappointed, it's because I have high expectations for him. But yeah, I'd still start him straight away next week. I'm not concerned about him at all.
And I think we all have elevated expectations of what McTominay should be capable of doing, owing to sort of how good he's been in pre-season and how good.
And it is, it's a very good three-man midfield. So I'm actually surprised they did as well. I thought before the game, I thought that was the issue. That's where the issue was going to be, and it wasn't necessarily where the issue was as much as I expected it.
Yeah, and this is where I was going to go on to, is that I felt like he, along with Pogba, did a really good job of sort of locking down that midfield area as a 2 against 3. I think that he's gotten through a lot of work, as Paul as well, kind of maybe surprisingly, although not if you actually look into the stats. But, and as I say, McTominay's game going forward wasn't great. I felt like defensively he had a really good game. He won, I think it'll look like he won a lot of aerial duels from those long balls from Rui Patricio, him and Maguire. Wherever the ball was landing, they seemed to have the better of the aerial duels, and less so of that in the second half from both of them. But definitely in that first half,
I think my thing with Scott is I just think he can do more. I think he is a good passer of the ball, and I think
he's deferential in the same way that Carrick used to be deferential to Scholes when Carrick first arrived at the club. He was like, okay, this is the guy who clearly has the more passing range, so I'm gonna.
But I think he still has to help out, and I think he still has to provide an option. I'd like him to pick that up. That kind of making himself available on the ball, because I think sometimes he thinks he's there to do the job off the ball and not necessarily on the ball. And I think, and we can't.
We always used to say that about Carrick as well, that we wanted, like, for people who don't know, it was never always sort of sunshine and rainbows amongst the United fan base with regards to Michael Carrick, because a lot of people used to say, well, he lets the game go by him, he doesn't, he's always passing sideways to Scholes, he's just deferring to Scholes and this, that and the other, and it was only when Scholes became sort of
old,
less and less involved with the first team lineup. That then Carrick and Fletcher then sort of really came into their own and stopped deferring 2 scores and became sort of their own men, so to speak.
I thought McTominay, I thought he grew into it again in the second half, but I didn't think he realized how dangerous Traore was, and he was a little bit slow to get over in the first 5-10 minutes that second half when they would play the ball out to Traore, and that actually was how they got the free kick that I think Jimenez put it onto the on the post. That was Traore had a chance to line up Shaw and run at him, and then McTominay got over finally. But you have to kind of realize where the danger is coming from, I think, and that's part of his learning curve.
I know you both thought he was very good, and I thought he was decent, but I think Shaw and I've read already, that when you've got a player like Adama Traore, you can't really blame the fullback too much because he's just a beast and whatever else. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, how's he not getting games at Wolves? Do you know what I mean? Why does he never get anywhere near Barcelona's team? Yeah, of course, but at the same time, other people manage him very easily, I think, sometimes, and it's about getting tight. I really do think, I appreciate he can beat you in a sprint, but I think you have to get tight, and I think Shaw has shown a few times, particularly when up against a very, very direct and athletic winger who's happy just to run him down the line, that he really, I don't want to say fear, but he almost backs up and says, whoa, I have to be super careful here, I have to back away, and I have to give you lots of space, almost like he doesn't want to engage for fear of being beaten, and that's totally the wrong thing to do.
I think there's maybe a bit of a mental block with Shaw because there was a big criticism of him last year and how many times he was getting yellow carded.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a conversation that Ole's had to have with him and saying, look, we don't have another left back. You can't afford to be suspended. And I think that maybe that's playing on his head a little bit. He's just, right, okay, I'll give him a yard, but as long as I'm showing him down the line, then I'm confident enough of my own pace and I'm confident enough of my own upper body
strength. He really
strength.
should be, even with Traore, that there was that kind of, to flip it, there was the moment where he got past him and Traore got back across him, but it showed it was a good battle. It would be like Traore's a specimen, don't get me wrong, but he wouldn't be totally dwarfed by him pace wise and all that kind of stuff. So I would have just liked him to back himself more and own that. Whereas I thought, I'd say if you look at his average position when it's Matt Doherty on, he was much wider and much more proactive when Doherty had the ball and when we had the ball. And then as soon as Traore comes on, he's holding Maguire's hand from then on, and I just think that was slightly disappointing because Traore made a huge impact, and I think we could have managed that much better because he is not some absolute world beater.
How much of that is Shaw and how much of that is Ole then is sort of down to how you interpret it without us obviously being on the pitch or in those conversations? I guess we'll never really know, but it seemed like it was a very deliberate move by Nuno to say, right, okay, Luke Shaw's been the danger thus far. And he was, in terms of attacking outlet as well, he had a much improved game on his Chelsea game, and I think even as an overall 90 minutes, I think he was much improved on that Chelsea game as well. So it really showed what he can be about. I think it's just the case of just putting the entire package together just in one game for him now. I do take your point slightly in that he would do well to just back himself a little bit more against Traore. I think in general, Luke Shaw would just do a little bit better just to back himself.
In every aspect, I think as well.
That's in all facets of the game. And I think those are the things that are coming.
Particularly going forward as well, because he shows so many good things and then you're just like, do that more.
Even his crossing and his delivery from set pieces today was like... Everyone he hit beat the first man. I mean, I know that they were generally floaty type balls.
I was going to say, it's easy to beat the first man when you're literally pumping it as high into the air as you possibly can, which is a corner routine that I hope dies on its arse sooner rather than later.
I would sooner that and us be given
than
a chance
Juan Matters, yeah.
than the Juan Matters and what he produced or didn't produce.
Totally agree, but I think we're setting two fairly low standards there, to be honest.
I agree, but we don't really have a set piece deliverer other than.
It's probably as good an argument for Pereira starting as anything, to be honest, which is a pretty poor indictment. But that loopy corner to Maguire at the back post to header back across with absolutely no pace, no runners or anything is just we did that like 5 times and it's a complete waste. It was absolutely boiling my piss by the end of it,
especially after that Wolves corner.
Yeah, and it's low percentage. I 100% agree, but
I don't even know what the dream is.
I'd rather low percentage than no percentage.
Give Maguire a ball he can actually attack. This have him peel off to the 18-yard line to pump it back in to no one. I don't understand what the dream is there.
Well, I don't even understand why Luke Shaw's going out to the right to take his corners, because I'm a proponent of the outswinger, and then you generate momentum by attacking it rather than just having in swingers and then hoping to get a touch and hoping to direct it towards goal. So I think that's just a matter of preference. I don't really care if it's a
left footer or right footer. I just want someone who can, 9 times out of 10 put the ball on the penalty spot. That's all. Like, that's really all you need to do.
Just put it in the danger area, please.
Yeah. So
the mixer.
That was frustrating me like nothing else.
I mean, we'll get into the penalty a little bit, I guess, before we kind of wrap it all up. I just want to point out, just on the Lingard thing as well, that first goal doesn't happen without him.
No, a perfect first goal. He finds that not a space. He drops it back to, I think it's McTominay plays it in him. He drops it back to Shaw. Shaw then runs past. He drops it into Rashford and all that. And yeah, absolutely, he's instrumental in that goal. But that's
he's a 10 though. He has to do
enough.
more than that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not.
No, exactly.
And even before
Ashwin, this is what we're going to get into.
Hold on. I just want to talk about this one because we glossed over it real quick. But he had a chance to make it 2-0. Bissaka put in a ball right.
Yeah.
Like on the edge of the 6-yard box. He completely whiffed on that. I'm not saying you have to score, but like you got to get some contact on that. That was really bad. That was really, really bad.
That was a poor finish. That was a tired finish, I think. By that point, he looked
tired.
spent.
I thought throughout the game, and that wasn't late in the game. That chance,
It was like 50 minutes, not even.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't think it was 50 minutes. I think it was a little bit after that. And even then, I think the amount of running that he got through, I think it was, it seemed like he was just knackered because he was getting through a lot of running, and this like he does. I mean, I'll defend Jesse to the hilt. Because he should do more, he should get more goals, he should get more assists, but those can't be the only metrics by which we're judging Jesse Lingard in terms of what his overall instruction is, because we don't really know what he's instructed to do. But those little bits of play, like where you move into a very close kind of rhombus of 4 Wolves players, pick up the ball, take one touch to get out your feet, and then move the ball on quickly. That's what he does. And that's what he's best at, is taking the ball on the half turn, then running at the defence and making something happen from there. If he does more of that, fine, that's great. But that's never going to be stuff that shows up in the stats column.
I think the issue with Jesse is always going to be where you play him, really, because he's not a right winger. I think 10's his best position, but he leaves a lot to be desired by other classic 10s, in terms of direct goal involvement and output and kind of either running with the ball or facing the goal and doing some work. And then I think people probably wouldn't try him as an 8 or a 6 or whatever else, even though I think he is much more suited to deeper play and where he can have players around him, because I think sometimes we don't dominate the ball enough and press teams back enough and be patient enough to really let him, do his best work, which is a bit of a shame. I still don't think I don't think we suit him the best sometimes. And then
there's a really weird experiment. There's a really weird experiment in the offing with Lingard as a 6.
Yeah.
Hasn't Southgate used him as an 8? Doesn't he use him as an 8 when they went 3 at the back?
City frequently play like Gundogan and Silva even back there, and there's no issue with that if you're good enough and if you have the right setup with the whole team. But I think we're a ways away from that, to be honest.
No, absolutely.
But I said it before, and it's not to rag on Jesse, but I would just like, and I think it's not helped by, again, and I don't mean to rag on Daniel James, but if we had a shit hot right winger, it takes the stress off completely, because then you've genuine threat coming from both wings. But at the moment, I just feel that Rashford and Martial deserve a little bit more in terms of delivery and providing that they're not getting from whoever the 10 and whoever the right winger is, combined with Pogba being so far back that he can really only impact the game in more, like really quick transitions, or where he really drives forward and puts himself in that position like he did for the penalty chance. And I just think one more player there of real top quality and we put Wolves away comfortably today, And I really, really think that.
I just think sometimes he's like, you just want to see him back himself more. Like there are times where there's a ball onto Martial and he plays it out wide instead. And I don't know, in that position, I just think you need somebody that is either a goal threat or creating chances nonstop, or preferably both. But right now Lingard he's a hard worker. He definitely is, good at the press, and obviously that's something that Ole really wants. But it's just, I think it's like, you look at the 10s that were out on the market this summer, and I think that also leads people to be frustrated because we were linked to Bruno Fernandes all summer, which may or may not have been bullshit. Whatever it was,
scored a great goal last weekend.
It definitely was bullshit though.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, and if it was bullshit, that's fine. But then it's also frustrating for people because they're like, well, why the hell weren't we in for this guy? Because he's
in a farmers league.
Okay, but that's
people criticize people that come over from France for fuck's sake.
Okay,
like, what the fuck do you think Fernandes is going to?
But people come from farmers leagues and perform in the Premier League. Last time I checked, so like that's not really that
Fernandes wouldn't be one of them.
Easy to say.
I mean, I'm not saying he is the solution.
Everyone's absolutely convinced that he would come over and perform.
But we know that Lingard isn't going to do it.
He would.
We know that Lingard's not going to do it. So that's the frustrating part. Because you're like, why the fuck do you not? I personally am fine with them not going for Fernandes. I can understand the reasoning, and that's fine. But like, it is if you're going into the season, you're saying we're going to play 4-2-3-1, and Jesse is my 10. Like, that's problematic because your 10 isn't going to score a bunch of goals and isn't going to create chances. So I don't care how good he is at recycling possession. I don't care how hard he works. Like, those things are great, but they're the attributes of a squad player, not a starting 11 player.
Which is what he is.
But he's a starting 11 player right now. That's the frustration.
Because you can't remodel an entire starting 11 one fucking go.
No, but he's been here. He's been here for how long? He's been here.
It's not his fault.
But that's not
his fucking fault.
Who's saying it? I'm not saying it's his fucking fault.
Everybody's at him.
I'm not at him. I'm telling you what the frustration is. The frustration is he is a player who's been here for, 5-6 years. We know what he is, okay? He's not this creative force. So us, consistently putting him in this position, which has happened under multiple managers, it's going to lead to frustration because then his shortcomings become evident. Whereas when he's a squad player and can come in, when you need him or used as a sub in those situations,
wait a minute.
Then people will have a more appropriate appreciation for, oh, wow, okay, this is what he does. Do you think if we were starting John O'Shea every week and right back, people would be like, oh, man, what a great squad player? No, they wouldn't. They would hate him.
That's exactly what they were saying.
No,
that's exactly
because we were
what
winning
they were saying.
Because our team was much better. This team is not good enough to carry somebody like Jesse Lingard at the 10. It's not. They're not going to he's not a great enough player.
It seems so erroneous and so bullshit to me to say is that we would appreciate the qualities that he brings if he just wasn't playing so much. That's bollocks to me. That's absolute horse piss to me.
I don't get that at all. I think it makes complete sense.
No, that's
I think it's maybe not phrased the right way, but I totally understand what he means. There's lots of players who, football's not about just your 11. Premier League football is not won by the best 11; it's won by the best squad. So there are players who just and we play 50 games plus a year, so by not being a nailed-on first-choice starter doesn't mean you aren't getting 30 games, be that off the bench, be that starting 1 week but then out the next week. So, plus, players can play multiple positions, particularly in our team, so there'll be games where Jesse starts in the right, games where he starts in the middle, and I do think he could play deeper. So, it's not as if we just have, these are our 11 players, these are those positions that you're getting all year round, and we're just going to stick with it, and you best like it, So it's not really fair to say either way that that's the case. Ideally, I think the only point Ashwin is making is that we do need more star quality there, and I think that's fair. I don't think that's, and I am a Jesse fan. There's no issue with that, but I think in an ideal situation, I think if United were challenging for top honours and were really solidly within the top 4, he wouldn't be a starter unless we had an extremely good right winger and it became a tactical thing where he was the best fit, which I don't think that couldn't be the situation. But I think when there's other frailties in that front line, I think he is a sum of the parts guy, and I think he is a guy that does really well with creative players around him, and when we have a lot of the ball, and we're not necessarily about that at the moment and don't necessarily have the players to really impact that. And that's fine because it is a transition year, and as Mark rightly says, you absolutely cannot fix it all. You can't just go out and buy 8 players and expect it to be perfect. That would just be a disaster for different reasons, and there's no reason why we should have done that. But it's still one area that I think is constantly let us down. And I do think if you look at today's game objectively, I think the 10's a big problem. And I think it was also a bit of an issue against against Chelsea. So, it is a slight problem. Now, if we're going to play Lingard for a whack of games and play Gomez for a whack of games and just say, look, we'll either buy in the summer or Gomez is going to step into this role, then that's great. And if Jesse suddenly turns it on and has, a spell like he did, I think 2 seasons ago where he got his 14-goal season or whatever else, then great, we'll all be happy as Larry. But I think to look at that and just say, oh no, that possession is totally fine is not a realistic view of the whole thing.
no one's saying that it's absolutely fine. It's clear that there's an upgrade that's needed in that position. But what I'm saying is that it's only half of his game that's really affected us today. And no one's sort of paying much attention to the game going back the other way, where he's really affected the game is defensively. Now, people might not want to hear about the defensive contribution of a 10, but in a high press system, the fact that he was able to force Wolves into so much long ball, to which Maguire and McTominay were dealing with so much of it, and we were able to recycle possession, that's a huge part of what our game plan is. And if you're saying it's like, and if you sat there saying it's like, oh, I don't care if he recycles possession, I don't care if he's good in the press. Well, those are two things that we're actually really relying on from a tactical standpoint. So it behooves him to be good in those areas. And if he's good in those areas, then he should. He reminds me of like Jason Park's a lazy comparison because they both get through some running, and they both like, but it's a lazy and cliche comparison because there is some truth in there. But I think the player who he resembles most to me, in terms of that number 10 role, is like, and this will maybe show my age or my nerdiness, I don't know, but he reminds me of that old Barcelona player, Bakero. Bakero would just post up and basically just like tap off little things and he would come up with the odd goal, but he was central to that Johan Cruyff team in the early 90s. And he kind of reminds me of like that a little bit in terms of the fact that his defensive contribution is just as important as what his offensive contribution would be, if not more. So there's a lot going.
I think he's very good in the press and is high energy, but I don't think that is a unique quality that only Jesse Lingard possesses.
No, not at all. But in terms of our squad, I think it is.
Probably at the moment, and I don't think he does it to a level that is
he reminds me of Oscar.
Irreplaceable or anything like that. And also, I don't actually think that our press was that great today. I think we put Wolves under a bit of pressure, but I don't think it was like we didn't force a whole pile of turnovers that led to like really good chances or anything like that. Whether that was our fault for not making them or whatever else, but
the turnover of possession wasn't high up the pitch. Wolves dealt with it well on that basis, but that's because they started lumping it. So that's where all the transitions were coming in terms of possession. It was more in our half because they were just bypassing our press and looking to bring in Jimenez and Jota, but we were able to nullify that.
The point I keep coming back to on this is that it's not just Jesse Lingard, and he will get abuse from a lot of angles, which is rightly or wrongly. And his qualities are there to see, but equally, he isn't the most impactful sometimes across a whole 90 minutes or in a very obvious way. And again, I said it earlier, if there's a right winger there who's firing on all cylinders, I think this becomes a bit of a non-issue, and actually you see a much better Jesse Lingard as well. And I'm prepared to give Dan James all the time in the world, but I thought today he, as I've seen quite a lot from him so far, really seemed to play within himself, and clearly lots of ability, and he seemed to come out of his shell a little bit more in the second half. I don't know whether that was just a personal decision he made, or he was a bit fired up or whatever else, but he actually started, driving in field and using his pace, taking men on, selling a few dummies. But particularly in the first half, like I could tell you what he's going to do before he does it every single time. He's so predictable at the moment, and I think it just comes from not wanting to make a mistake under the big lights and not wanting to look silly or give the ball away and have that be his fault that they broke up the pitch, whatever. And to me, that's playing with fear a little bit and playing within yourself, and that's not a good recipe for any player, but particularly not for an attacker at United. So hopefully he gains a bit more confidence. It wasn't the kick-on performance that maybe we were all hoping for following his goal. And he still put in a few good balls that the other players didn't react to. But as a left back, I'd be pretty comfortable knowing that I could just stand him up, and then block it. He'd win us loads of corners, he'd win us loads of fouls, but that's not really helping us at the moment. So that was an issue as well, I think.
Yeah. We'll move on because I think frustration is obviously the key word. I think from tonight. It's just
it is, and it's been negative enough, but I still think we'll talk about the penalty, but there's a lot of individual elements there that are very frustrating. But broadly, we should have won that game probably quite comfortably, and the frustration comes from the fact that we were better than Wolves today quite handily. And now maybe Wolves aren't just quite as good as they were last year, and we've clearly kicked on. But to get the win, to then go to Crystal Palace before the international break with possibly a full punch, a draw away at Wolves is not going to be the ruining of our season. But I think you just so much want this team to galvanise, and it was clear to see that things we're doing were working. It was clear to see that the new system, the press, the
back line,
trust that we've put in Martial and Rashford, the back four being very solid. A lot of that stuff was there. It was great, and whilst we didn't, create as much as we wanted, which is a big problem for us, I think that's the obvious problem that we would have said that is going to be the problem at the start of the season. So you can't really be too frustrated at something that was kind of expected unless you really lose your mind about transfers, like half the world seems to.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of positives there. But for me, it's the manner that we kind of let the game peter out. That's the bit that really sticks with me in terms of after the penalty miss. We really seemed to deflate after that. The front three looked very tired. Subs didn't come nearly quick enough, I thought. Although I do understand that maybe he was trying to make these players play through it and get the result, which would have been a big boon. But I thought after that we didn't really show that desire to say, you know what, Pogba missed the penalty. Never mind that. We're gonna stick another one in here. I thought when that penalty was saved, I thought it doesn't matter. We're gonna get one more good chance. We're gonna get one or two good. There's 20 minutes of this game left. Someone will have the chance to put this game to bed, and we'll do it. And we didn't even get the chance. We literally didn't create a single thing in that last 25 minutes. And that
Shaw had that chance.
That was my biggest disappointment, I suppose, because broadly there was lots of things I was happy with there, and objectively, it's far from the worst result in the world.
Just to go to what Ashwin said there, like the Shaw chance wouldn't have counted either way because the ref blew up for a foul.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. So but to take Colm's point, the penalty, I don't think any of us have any advancement on that it was a poor penalty. I don't think
Paul Pogba should be anywhere near our penalties.
Oh yeah, I know you wanted to say something about this. You were vocal in the WhatsApp about this. So.
He's missed 4 in the last year. He has, I think, one of the lowest conversion rates in the Premier League, in Premier League history. It's bad. And the other thing is, how does Paul Pogba take his penalties? The answer is a different way every single week, which works if it works, but it ain't working. I think he has a real issue with telegraphing where he's going to put his penalty. I don't think he disguises it at all. I think it's this almost... I don't want to rag on Pogba because, as I said earlier, I actually thought he was brave today in his play, and although it wasn't good in terms of his forward play, with passes not coming off broadly, I'm not worried about Paul Pogba during the 90 minutes of football. But this leadership role does slightly concern me because he should not be taking that penalty. And I appreciate he probably is the number one penalty taker for whatever reason. I think it's to satisfy his ego more than anything else and to not upset him because he wants to leave. And I thought that last year. But that's not a reason to take penalties. We spoke last week that Rashford obviously took it. It looks now that he probably took that off Paul last week. And this is kind of the discussion that's going to happen every time we win a penalty between Paul and Rashford.
I don't think it will now.
Well,
I don't think it will now.
I bloody well hope not, because that's a very good example of why it shouldn't, And just just when he took the run up, it was a new short run up. You just knew he was missing such a savable height. And look, he was as devastated as anyone. And Paul Pogba was an absolute champion of a personality. He'll always take that on his shoulders. But Ole has to step in there and say, well, actually, no, you don't need to. There's better penalty takers. That won't upset. That might upset a player, but it doesn't matter. You're still right. It's track proven. He is a poor penalty taker. He shouldn't be, but he is. I think it's him wanting always to do something a little bit special or a little bit, different, as opposed to just smashing it in like Rashford does. You rely on your technique. You're a great footballer. Just stick it in. I think Martial would be a better penalty taker. I'd probably pick several names there who I'd rather have hitting them than Paul Pogba. And if he continues to take them and continues to miss them, I think that shows that, maybe he is the boss a bit there. And I think that's really unhealthy. So I would really like to see a firm stance behind closed doors with this,
I would say that's probably the death knell for Paul Pogba in penalty taking. Like when Rashford puts one in and Pogba then misses, like I think Ole will probably step in and just say, look, just give it the strikers from now. Like our strikers are going to need goals this year, and they're going to need that confidence that having the penalty takers sort of tag next to them sort of goes with that. So I think he'll give it Rashford. If he misses one, it'll probably go to Martial. Then it might come back round to Pogba at that point, depending also on who else is on the pitch at that time. I can appreciate Pogba wanting to step up. He stepped up a lot last year and converted a lot of penalties for us last year, sort of at the start of Ole's reign there. And I can appreciate that he was on a scoring role or a scoring run with penalties. That I think since Solskjaer took over, I think this is probably the first one that he's missed. I could be wrong.
He missed against Southampton last year too.
Yeah.
Which one was that? Sorry,
that was the one where there was like a minor controversy because Lukaku was on a brace, and then Pogba took one right at the end.
Yeah, but that was when Mourinho was still in charge. So since Solskjaer's taken over,
that was Solskjaer. That was like during the winning run or whatever.
Oh yeah, sorry, the one at OT. Yeah, no, that was the one right at the end there. My mistake. But yeah, I think that'll probably be the death knell for that now. But shit penalty, what can you do?
Give it to Rashford.
you saw that you can't do it retrospectively, can you?
No, I think again it's the response. You know, there's still 20 minutes left of that game. You know, 25 minutes. Sorry, just to interject. I think what it looked like was that he immediately went into himself after that penalty miss. It was almost as if he felt like he'd missed one in the 89th minute rather than the 65th. I think as a team, we did, which is disappointing.
I think we did for a bit, but then I thought coming into like the last 15 to 20 minutes, I thought again we started to turn the screw a little bit at that point. I think if it was one of those ones where if we'd had 5 more minutes, I think we maybe could have done something because we were getting.
I don't know. Like in the last minute, Mata was like lumping in useless balls from the halfway line.
But that's just what he does.
That's because that's Mata. Like
I just think one of those things, you know, and I think a team that really knows what it's about and knows that the way it plays will be successful does a lot better there. And that's, you know, it's an unfair criticism to compare us to City and Liverpool and all that because we're so far behind in the transition, obviously. And that's totally true. But it used to be such a hallmark of United teams that if a team got back into it, because 1-0 is always a precarious lead, and teams do get chances and goals like that do fly. And, you know, in terms of Neves's, and there's really nothing, as we've discussed, that anyone can do about that. But I think there obviously was a time when if you're Manchester United, that ball flies in and everyone is personally offended by that. You know, it's like we didn't expect that. You shouldn't have done that. We're going to go and, you know, show you what's what, essentially. And it would just ratchet up, you know, and teams wouldn't be able to go out. And it was this audible pressure thing. And obviously we're playing against decent top 6 opposition and stuff like that. So you can't just have it all your own way. But I just think there was still no, like, really desire from anyone to show a bit of leadership and to stand up and say, I'll drag us back into this. I'll make that one gut-busting run. I'll get the fans out of their seats. I'll have a pop. You know, it seemed to take the wind out of everyone's sails quite collectively. And whilst we did regain like quite dominant possession, sort of in the last 15 or 20 minutes, relatively speaking, there was no cohesion to it. There was no threat to it whatsoever, I thought, and didn't really seem like there was that belief to really, you know, crack on and get the win. That would have been a big win. Well, I still think was there, you know, to be taken, and that's kind of a mentality thing. And look, it's a young team. It's just the start of the season. It's a new way of playing, and all this, that, and the other. So it's not a massive criticism, but it is slightly disappointing. And that was for me out of the whole game. Take away the penalty miss, take away maybe the lack of creativity in the first half, take away the 70 minutes of what I thought was a very decent performance against a good Wolves team. That was the big disappointing factor, that we never then, you know, kicked on after that and showed a response.
Yeah.
I think we did respond, and again, it comes back to the point where we started talking about the second half. Like, I felt we played very well up into the 18-yard box, and that's sort of the last sort of thing is that we need to kind of figure out. And that kind of, I thought James grew into the game. I felt like the moment he started growing into the game, he got hauled off. I couldn't understand that because he was very clearly at that moment the one who represented the most amount of danger. He'd starting to put it together. He was starting to come in field, starting to use his pace a lot more. The subs were baffling to a point because I didn't think that if you're just going to make subs that late, don't make the subs at all. Because like Mata didn't find the pace of the game, he didn't find the tempo of the game. Neither did Greenwood. No one did. So they were pointless substitutions at that point. They were just subs for the sake of looking like you're doing something, despite the fact that you weren't putting them in a position to succeed.
I think that game was not made for Mata to play. That was like, if you're going to make a sub, and I agree with you, he should have. I think if he was going to make a sub, the sub to make was to take Lingard out earlier. But, you know, when he actually did make the first substitution for Mata, I agree with you. I think that we had kind of gotten our, you know, whatever, our courage back, and we're looking to try and at least, you know, push Wolves and keep them back. And I just thought bringing Mata in for Lingard was such a bad choice, because I thought like the game it wasn't completely wide open, but it was fast, and there were openings to be had. And I think when you bring in Mata, generally when he does do well as a sub, it's more in a situation where, one, if we have a set piece, like right in front, off to the right, where he can just curl it in, or when he's just, you know, when a team is just sitting back. Like if it was 0-0 and Wolves was playing exactly how they had played in the first half, that probably would have been a good time to bring in Mata. But at 1-1, with the game kind of open, I thought Pereira for Lingard was the obvious move to make there, and then maybe Greenwood for James. But I also agree with you on that I thought James had kind of, again, found his footing and was looking the most dangerous, to be honest, of all of the three attackers at that point. So, yeah, I guess maybe some poor in-game management from Ole in that instance. But, yeah, I would have liked to see Pereira get a little bit more time, because I know that we've talked about him before, and as you mentioned, but like, he can be frustrating, but he also is capable of producing a moment, and that game just needed a moment. That's really all it needed.
I thought very early on, I mean, when I saw the team sheet, I just thought that bench is not good. And I thought if this game goes to a tight finish and we need someone to change it off the bench, that player isn't on the bench. And I think Greenwood is the only one who I would have put in the game, to be honest. I love Mata, but it's such a specific, as you alluded to, Ashwin, which I think is absolutely bang on. If Wolves are playing a certain way, I think he does a job. I think that game at that time was not for Juan Mata at all. And I sort of wondered to myself, are these like, has he put him in there because he thinks he's the best option at that time for the game? Has he put him in because he thinks players are tiring? Which, I mean, I thought that of Rashford. I didn't think it of James at all. Has he put it in there because he's just signed a new contract and because he's on the bench because he has experience and it just seems like the easy choice? I felt like that's what that was what it was. I felt Greenwood should have went straight in. If you're looking for a goal, I think it has to be Greenwood out of that bench. I don't see what Pereira brings in terms of us winning that game. I think Pereira's a starter if you're going to play him. I don't think he is a tremendous impact sub. I mean, what did he do? He came in and looked busy around the halfway line playing some sideways passes. Mata came in, slowed our play down and tried to loft in balls that were never on in the first place and crossed poorly. And that's harsh on both them. It's tough to come into a game like that, but then why even make the sub? I thought Greenwood, give him a good 20 minutes, give him, take maybe Lingard off and drop Martial into the hole, move Rashford essentially, do whatever, be brave and try and win the game. And I don't think those subs showed that at all. I think they were the wrong players at the wrong times, to be honest. I thought that was poor. I didn't understand why he wanted to keep the starting 11 on. I felt it would be good if they could work through it, and he maybe was wanting to see the response from certain players and then maybe felt he didn't get it. So I did understand in that sense why he left it late, but to me that bench was a concern because again it shows the lack of depth, particularly in the attacking side of things, because I felt that a 17-year-old who hasn't scored a senior goal for Manchester United was our best attacking option, and that's as much as I think Greenwood's going to be an absolute legend, and I would have absolutely put him on with 20 minutes to go, and I think we might have seen more from him. That's still a pretty poor indictment of where we are with our squad depth, which is fine, because again, you can't fix it all in one window, but I just felt like Ole got that slightly wrong.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe one of the overlooked things with regards to not just the team, but also Ole as well, is that he's someone who's learning along with this team. He's learning what it is to be a successful manager in the Premier League. I think objectively, you could say that he's been a successful manager. Like, he's won things in his home country, although he's been successful in Europe with them as well. So objectively, you can say that his managerial career has been a success, and he's obviously had his great run when he came in on a caretaker basis. And I think it's just a case of now that he's also learning and adapting all at the same time as well. And I think tonight will be as big a learning experience for him as it will end up being for the players as well. And I don't think it can be really overstated how much, although we all love Ole and we want him to succeed, he's not the finished product in terms of a manager. And we're going to have to go through some growing pains with him as much as we do with these players this season. Just moving on to that and potential growing pains, a lot of that will be in the response and as to what has been learned and what hasn't been learned from tonight. Palace had a pretty boring draw against Everton and were particularly uninspiring in their loss at the weekend as well.
So they're going to beat us 3-0 next week.
Yeah, of course, it's in the cards, isn't it? But they did not look good against Sheffield United. They didn't look threatening. They looked like Palace in August. Palace in August always look terrible. So this is probably the best time to play them because they don't usually find their footing until sort of September, October time. They're always in and around the relegation area, and then they kind of find their stride in mid-season. Zaha looks like he's still struggling for a bit of match sharpness. Still looks a bit disjointed with the rest of the squad. The defence doesn't look
sharp,
all that inspiring. I think it's got a couple of injuries in there as well. I've seen enough in the first two performances, and this one coming back and being a home game as well. I've seen enough in those two performances to think that we should be we should be dispatching Palace. It's just all be about how frustrated the squad is and how they respond. And I think this game coming up will show us more about this side than the last 180 minutes put together, I think. How do you guys see it?
I'm not sure it will, because I think the last 180 minutes have shown us quite a lot about this side and quite a lot of positive things. So I don't think I don't think the fact that tonight hasn't gone exactly to plan sort of tarnishes that. I do think, and I think kind of this is what you're angling at, is that next week has now the potential to be a big banana skin for us. And you don't want to read too much into early fixtures, but I do think it could grind our momentum to a big halt if we don't get a good win, or win at all. So I think this result does put a slight bit of pressure on us, but that's probably to manage. I don't think when they analyse the game they're going to come away thinking, we were lucky to get a point and we haven't been beaten. Obviously, there's no great drama there, but I do think it just puts that tiny little bit more pressure that we will be expecting a reaction, and Old Trafford will be wanting to see, a response and some creativity. Having said that, I still think Palace I think you hit the nail on the head last week, Mark, when you said, you take Wan-Bissaka out of that backline and it begins to look so ordinary, and I think that's true for a lot of their team. You just struggle to see them doing extremely well this year if Zaha isn't absolutely bang on form, and I think previously we've been quite able to manage him, and certainly if accounts are anything to go by, Wan-Bissaka always had the beating of him in training. So I'm expecting a comfortable win. I think 3-0.
Yeah, I think if we've learned anything, it's that we should win this easily. I think if what I think I've learned about this team in the first two matches is what I think they are, then we should win this 3-0, 4-0, whatever. I don't even care about how many goals, as long as it's like very much we're in control and we're just dominating, because Palace looks shit. I saw them against Sheffield, and I honestly don't even think they created a single chance. I can't remember if they did. The only chance I could remember is maybe Zaha winning a free kick and them putting it in the box. That's about it. So
I think Henderson made one save from a shot that would be trouble, like an actual save, not something that just sort of trickled through to him. Like he made one quote unquote good save.
Oh, in the first half, right?
In the entire game. So I think it might have been the second half. Actually, it was when he had the cap on. So I think it might have been
lovely cap it was as well.
It was a fantastic cap. Yeah, I would have preferred a lime green one to go completely
with the kit,
throughout the entire kit. Yeah, but
he's my fantasy football keeper, and he netted me a cool 8 points. So
excellent
in an otherwise disappointing week. Thank you, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, for your lack of clean shooting yellow card.
Which was by no means a fucking yellow card either. And this is a point that I want to get across as well. If VAR is meant to be taken away,
that was bad, wasn't it?
If it's meant to be taking away all of the things that are wrong, then why can't you then go back and retroactively take away a yellow card? If we're doing this with VAR now, why can't you go back and retroactively take away a yellow card? Because that could cost us in the season, and it had no right to, because it wasn't a yellow card, because it wasn't a handball.
See, even if their goal had been offside, I would have been upset.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah.
Because he would have been offside, his shoulder would have been offside in a totally meaningless way. Do you know what I mean? So see when they were running that back and doing their MS Paint lines and stuff, and they shouldn't show that, because it shows it for what an amateur job it really is.
Yeah.
Some guy was literally just trying to, does that look like it's on the edge of the ball? Aye, let's say so. Great, cheers. And then these little lines were coming out, and I was like, the only part of him that's going to be offside here is a shoulder fibre, and if they honestly are going to disallow this beautiful goal because of that, I will be sickened. And obviously I didn't want it to be 1-1, but at the same time, what a farce, really, And I'm a fan of VAR. I just think it's going to be 2 or 3 seasons before it's even any way tolerable, and that's okay.
It needs to be done like a coach's challenge.
I would have gotten over it. I'm just going to throw it out there.
The issue with VAR is their religious kind of adherence to it either is black or white. Do you know what I mean? It seems like they've taken all kind of that handball rule in the box, but then if you're a defender, it doesn't count. If you're an attacker, it does count. That doesn't make any sense at all.
So someone had a really good point on Twitter. So if a defender handles it and then it sparks a counter attack, you go up the other end and score. If VAR comes back, and do they have to rule that a penalty to the other team?
Yeah, that happened this summer in the Portugal, in one of the Nations League matches. So I forgot who they were playing, but they had a corner. It was 1-0. Portugal was up 1-0. They had a corner. I think they scored on it. No, sorry. Whoever they were playing, they didn't score, whatever the hell it was. And then Portugal went down the other end and they scored. And then it was ruled out because of
a handball.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Start of the sequence, yeah.
Yeah.
I just think there's no, that I can think of, now I may be wrong here, but I can't think of any other rule in football that is one way when you're attacking and another way when you're defending.
Yeah, other than maybe like the foul, like it's a foul inside the box, outside the box.
That maybe gets given. But that's like a cultural, contextual thing almost.
Yeah,
and that's like fouls on goalkeepers that wouldn't be given against central defenders. Again, it's just like it's a built up kind of vibe that we have. But to explicitly say it's a penalty in this instance, but the exact same thing against the defending isn't, or whatever else, I just think that's so ludicrous. I'd love someone to sit down and explain to me how that's fair.
I've generally been a big fan of a lot of the rule changes that are coming over the last couple of years. I think they've been tweaked to a point where they are generally always making slight improvements upon the rules. There's always a bit of controversy around one or two of them, but generally they always get it right in terms of the improvements about the rules that they make. This one has been the last one in the last couple of years where it's just been so horrendously abjectly wrong, and apparently they've done it off of the back of one incident between Wolves and Man City last year. And it just seems such a reactionary, completely over the top, and it will no doubt be thrown out. If not halfway through the year, then it'll definitely be thrown out for next year, because there's no way that they can have a situation whereby, like you say, where one team can benefit from something while another team can't. Like, the rules need to be down the line 100% fair for both sets of teams at any stage. Yeah. If it's an offence for the attacker, it's then an offence for the defender as well. It needs to be like that.
But isn't that more just like an issue with the handball rule? Because that rule doesn't I mean, it just seems, there needs to be some kind of realistic understanding of what it is. If even the one that we got last year against PSG, I thought, look, I after seeing it a few times on the replay.
Don't you say it. Don't fucking say it.
After I saw it,
that was worse than Maradona 86.
But after I saw a few replays.
Don't you dare fucking say it.
After a few replays, I was like, oh, okay, no, that's a handball, right? Because he lifts his arm up and you can see he's clearly trying to make himself bigger. But the one this weekend with Laporte was I mean, what the fuck is he supposed to do?
He doesn't even know it's going to hit his hand. He doesn't even have a clue. Yeah. And nor does any player on the pitch.
And it'd be one thing if he was just getting a free leap, right? If there was nobody touching him or anything, then maybe I can understand it. But there's 15 people right around him. He's getting contact. He's being challenged as he goes up in the air. So it's not like
he's not even going up in the air. He's stooping for it.
Yeah,
they're both stooping for it. It gets through the pair of them. His arm's not. And
no,
this is another thing they had right. It's not an unnatural position for what he's attempting to do. It just happens to have come off his arm, and Jesus has put it in.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. Fuck City. VAR is obviously correct. But it can also be both correct and wrong at the same time.
Yeah, I also think just they're so keen to overly regulate that it completely takes away any onus from the referee. And I quite like, I like the idea that the referee has to earn his money and just make decisions. So I'm all for them viewing things. That's great. Go over and view it. Do you think that was a penalty? Because they can't just see everything live time. But I think there should be always be the function for a referee to view the replay and make his decision based on that. But it's still his decision based on his interpretation of the rules of the game, which don't have to be. You will never write a rule book that accounts for every single situation that's going to happen on a football pitch. It's simply not possible, and it seems like that's what they're trying to do. And I just don't think football's that complicated a game, and yet they seem to love making it out to be. Rugby is a very complicated game with lots of decisions like that. And because the refs mic'd up, because the standard refereeing is very high, and because there's not really a big clamour around questioning them, and there's a lot more respect in that sense, and they've had video replay refs in different rooms mic'd up and speaking to the ref, and there's rarely any issue. They watch it back 4, 5, 6 times. They explain there and then why they're making the decision, which I think is a huge part of it, that they're mic'd up. Everyone can hear them, and they say, I'm making this decision because I think this happened or that happened, and that's been proven by the TMO or whatever else. It just works far, far, far better. And football, for all the money in the sport, is making itself look pretty backward in its... don't get me wrong, I'm all for these steps forward with VAR. I'm a big fan of VAR, but God, it's not right at the moment. I don't think it will be for a few years.
The sports where it all works is the sports whereby the ref or the refereeing team, should we say, has a direct line of communication, and they either have a direct line of communication with the fans or with each other that you can hear over a broadcast.
Yeah.
And that I'm talking specifically there, NFL, NHL, and the rugby union, like you say as well.
NBA has that like last 2 minutes.
Yeah. So it's I think it needs to move maybe towards more of a coach's challenge type of thing. Either that or the referees just need to start letting more stuff go. Like, in which case, there's just no need for the referees there. I always felt that you could achieve what you get through VAR by just having those two refs like you see in the Europa League or in European games. Just give them more power to have a word in the ref's ear. Like that's it. That's all you need is just more eyes, and that's all technology is really. It's more eyes.
It'll take kind of respect away from the ref, or it'll be seen as people disagreeing or questioning. But if they see something more clearly, it's your team at the end of the day, and one man can simply not see everything that happens on a football pitch. So that's just I think that's a kind of a juvenile way of looking at it.
Communication has never been football's strong point as it pertains to the referees. I think that's the big takeaway from it. We've gone a little bit over the hour. Colm, you say 3-0 for Palace. Ashwin, you say 3 or 4-0. I'm kind of with the pair of you. I'd be happy with a 2-0. I'd be happy with a win. I'd be happy with a 1-0, to be honest, after tonight.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to see something tasty on Saturday, and I think Solskjaer is going to use it as an opportunity to give Greenwood a start. I think he'll have Greenwood a start, or he'll go all out, see that we need more from the number 10 position, and he may give Gomez a run out. I'm not sure.
Be saucy.
Big
that
shout.
would be very saucy. I'm not 100% convinced that it's going to happen. I still think he might go. I think the change might be Pereira for Lingard, given that it's going to be a more sort of attacking game. But it would be Pereira and Greenwood in, or Greenwood and Gomez, or just one of either Greenwood or Gomez. But Gomez is going to be at least on the bench, I think, for this game. I think Solskjaer is going to see this game as an opportunity to get them a run out and get them some more minutes under them. So hope that happens. But I'm also going to go for, I'd say, a 2 or 3-0. If gun to my head, I say it'll probably be a 2-0. But we'll leave it there. It's been a long one. So good luck, Dave. But that'll be good night for me.
Cheerio.
Good night for me.